Welcome to today's brand origin deep dive. How did a piece of software you probably remember only for uninstalling become one of history's most ubiquitous and controversial digital icons? If you find value in this kind of storytelling, consider liking the video and subscribing. It helps more than you know. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, or share your earliest memory of using that browser. Let's dive in and discover how it all began. You find yourself in a forgotten corporate archive, air thick with paper, ozone. Decaying servers hum faintly. Here, you uncover the first iteration of Internet Explorer, born not from triumph, but a hushed, almost clandestine internal project within a tech giant, its major historical milestone. Early design sketches hint at a different, never-used logo, a quirky, lesser-known detail. The feel of brittle printouts, the low thrum of power, the smell of old plastic evoke a sense of its vulnerable birth. Analysts continue to question the reasoning behind this secretive start, debating whether it was strategic necessity or internal friction. The tentative sketch of the blue E symbolizes this hesitant beginning, foreshadowing future battles. Building on what came before, this timid project rapidly transformed into an unstoppable tide. With its major historical milestone being its bundling as a default component of the dominant Windows operating system, Internet Explorer gained unprecedented reach almost overnight. It wasn't just available, it was there, unavoidable, on nearly every new PC shipped globally. This strategic integration, while brilliant from a market share perspective, also planted the seeds of future conflict. A quirky, lesser-known detail from this era reveals the internal mood swing. Early team memos show bewildered excitement at the exponential user growth, reportedly faster than anyone internally had predicted, almost like watching a snowball become an avalanche in real time. The symbolic blue E began solidifying, shifting from a sketch to a recognized portal for millions. Brand historians still debate whether this rapid, integration-driven dominance truly represented market choice or simply convenience leveraging a monopoly platform. The air in the archive seems to vibrate with this sudden, overwhelming success, a stark contrast to the hushed beginnings we just explored. You can almost hear the distant hum of modems connecting through its interface for the very first time. As explored in the previous phase, that initial bundling propelled the brand to dizzying heights, establishing its reign. Internet Explorer hit its major historical milestone of peak market share in the early 2000s, becoming for a time virtually synonymous with accessing the Internet itself. It felt like the only game in town. This period, however, was fraught with tension, culminating in massive antitrust challenges focusing directly on its bundling practices. A quirky, lesser-known detail from the time involves internal nicknames for competitors, revealing a mix of arrogance and underlying paranoia within the dominant team. They saw rivals less as innovators and more as irritants to be swatted away. The iconic blue E, now ubiquitous, became a symbol of corporate power as much as Internet access. Analysts continue to question the reasoning behind decisions made during this peak, debating whether a different approach to competition could have averted the legal battles and the eventual erosion of trust. The archive here shifts, documents becoming less about design and more about legal strategy, the hum of servers taking on a defensive tone. Building on what came before, the reign couldn't last forever. The fallout from the antitrust battles, and perhaps more critically, increasing security vulnerabilities and a slowing pace of innovation, marked the beginning of the long decline. The major historical milestone here was the point where competitors like Firefox and, crucially, Chrome began chipping away at IE's market share, first slowly, then with accelerating speed. The once dominant Blue E started to feel clunky, slow, even unsafe to users. A quirky, lesser-known detail involves an internal project codenamed New Breeze, an attempt to completely rebuild the browser engine years before Edge, which was reportedly scrapped due to internal politics and a reluctance to abandon the legacy codebase, a decision analysts continue to question, debating whether this missed opportunity sealed its fate. The air here in the archive feels heavy with missed chances. Printouts detail frustrating bug reports and plummeting user numbers. The symbolic E starts to look less like a confident portal and more like a relic. Building on what came before, the writing was clearly on the wall for the legacy browser. The response arrived as Project Spartan, eventually launching as Microsoft Edge. This marked a major historical milestone, a complete break from the old IE codebase and brand, signifying a recognition that the iconic Blue E was for many irrevocably tainted by its past. The goal was a faster, more modern browser built on newer technology. A quirky, lesser-known detail is how fiercely debated the new icon was internally. Early concepts included everything from abstract shapes to entirely new colors, before ultimately landing on a design that echoed the spirit of the old E, but with a fresh perspective, acknowledging the legacy while attempting to move forward. Brand historians still debate whether this rebrand and technical overhaul was too little, too late, or a necessary, albeit painful, evolution. The archive section for Edge feels different. Cleaner documents, different corporate logos, but the underlying hum of past struggles is still faintly audible beneath the surface of this attempted new hope. Following its decline and the pivot to Edge, the final major historical milestone for the original Internet Explorer was its official end-of-life announcement. For many, this felt less like a death and more like a formal retirement after years of quiet disuse. The browser, once the gateway to the internet for millions, became a cultural meme, a punchline about slowness or compatibility issues. A quirky, lesser-known detail that solidified this meme status was the viral spread of jokes about IE being used primarily to download other browsers, a self-fulfilling prophecy of its decline. Analysts continue to question the reasoning behind maintaining the legacy browser for so long, alongside Edge, debating whether it prolonged the negative brand association. The symbolic Blue E, once a sign of digital access, became a nostalgic, sometimes derided artifact. Wind down, and so we close the chapter on the physical remnants of this digital journey within the archive. Slowing down our pace now, we reflect on the echoes Internet Explorer leaves behind. Its story is a powerful lesson in the complex dynamics of brand. It shows how unprecedented success can be built on strategic advantage, but also how quickly dominance can erode when innovation stagnates and user trust is broken. Its long-term legacy is debated. Was it the necessary engine that powered the Internet's early growth, or a monopolistic force that stifled competition and held back progress? Perhaps it was both. The cultural symbolism of that Blue E shifted dramatically over its lifetime, from a beacon of the digital age to a symbol of corporate overreach, and finally, a nostalgic footnote or even a punchline. The lessons learned extend beyond software. Even the most dominant brands are vulnerable if they don't adapt, listen to users, and navigate ethical considerations carefully. Internet Explorer's stumbles remind us that a brand isn't just a logo or a product. It's the sum of its history, its impact, its perception, and the countless human experiences, good and bad, had with it. And maybe, just maybe, the soul of a brand is never in its product, but in the people, stories, and stumbles that shape it. Building on that precarious start, the project accelerates. You follow the paper trail, tracing its rapid ascent into the mainstream. This isn't just about market share. It's about a feeling. Suddenly, the software isn't just an application you install. It starts feeling like part of the operating system itself. It becomes this seamless, almost unavoidable presence in your digital life. A major historical turning point arrives. The decision to bundle the software directly with the dominant operating system. Inside the company, you witness the intense internal debates and power plays that led to this move. Analysts continue to question the reasoning behind such an aggressive tactic, wondering if market dominance was worth the potential legal and public backlash. Installing the software often meant handling textured CD-ROMs, feeling their weight before popping them into the drive. The sound of early modems connecting through this new browser became a soundtrack to discovery, a screeching symphony preceding the vibrant, sometimes jarring colors of nascent websites rendering on your screen for the very first time. A quirky detail from this era. Rumor has it the final bundling decision was sealed not in a boardroom, but during a chaotic off-site retreat after a projector malfunction forced the presentation onto a single tiny laptop screen, highlighting the desperation to integrate. The emotional shift in users is palpable. The initial vulnerability of navigating the web gives way to a potent, perhaps unsettling, sense of power and ubiquity. That blue E symbol, once a hopeful beacon, now feels inescapable, branded onto the very fabric of the digital landscape. Yet, as you watch this unparalleled power solidify, the narrative subtly hints at the future. This very integration, this dominance, carried the seeds of future stagnation and fierce resistance. Building on the momentum from those early wins, you arrive at the era of undeniable dominance, specifically the reign of Internet Explorer 6. For years, your E was the gateway to the Internet for millions. It was a major historical milestone in its own right, representing unparalleled market share. But reaching the top doesn't always breed better products. Instead, this peak success brought stagnation. Development wasn't about pushing boundaries. It became about maintaining a sprawling, complex codebase. The burden of backward compatibility became immense. Every new web standard had to bend to the quirks of IE6, forcing developers into endless, frustrating workarounds. It's like trying to build a skyscraper while ensuring it perfectly supports dial-up internet connections from the 90s. Internally, some teams even gave the requirement a weary nickname, the legacy anchor. You feel the drag on internal morale. The vibrant energy of creation gives way to the quiet grind of maintenance. The air in the development wings is heavy with the dull glow of monitors during late-night debugging, an oppressive silence replacing the earlier buzz as external competition starts to feel less like a distant hum and more like an approaching storm. The feeling shifts from confident power to a creeping complacency, slowly curdling into fear and denial as the cracks appear. The symbolic E feels heavy now, burdened by code bloat, perhaps even visibly deformed by the weight of its own past decisions. Brand historians still debate whether prioritizing backward compatibility so heavily was a necessary evil for customer retention or the strategic misstep that choked innovation at its core. You see the foreshadowing. External forces are gathering strength, learning your weaknesses, while internal conflicts over the future direction approach a breaking point. Building on what came before, the story now shifts dramatically. The dominance you just saw begins to crumble. Suddenly, faster, sleeker competitors appear on the horizon. Browsers that feel like sports cars next to the brand's reliable but increasingly clunky sedan. You see the jarring visual of a crisp new window from a rival popping up almost instantly, while the familiar E struggles to load, feeling like dial-up in a broadband world. This is the digital lag, a physical manifestation of its failing grip. Internal panic sets in. The once confident halls echo with frantic energy, often channeled into misguided attempts at reinvention. Teams chase trends, adding features users didn't need, while ignoring the core issue, speed and modern web standards. This period sees a major turning point. The release of a version intended to compete, but which arrives too late and feels instantly outdated, like trying to sell flip phones in the age of smartphones. Analysts continue to question the reasoning behind doubling down on proprietary technologies instead of embracing the open web earlier. There's a quirky, almost heartbreaking detail from this era. An internal proposal to rename the browser entirely, ditching the iconic E in a desperate bid for a fresh start. A suggestion that was ultimately shot down by leadership clinging to past glory. The emotional shift is palpable. Denial gives way to a painful public humiliation as market share erodes daily. That symbolic E, once a badge of ubiquity, feels fragile, chipped, appearing less and less frequently on newer operating systems. The metallic taste of defeat lingers in meeting rooms, a bitter reminder of squandered opportunity. The fate you sense is sealed, though the final act and the ghost it leaves behind are yet to fully unfold. Building on what came before, where the brand faced the intense pressure of a changing landscape, we arrive at a more somber chapter, the fading blue. You witness the slow, almost mournful abandonment of a once dominant force. As newer projects take precedence, the familiar browser becomes less a vibrant product and more a ghost in the machine. Technically present, perhaps even required for some ancient internal system, but culturally irrelevant. The bustling teams shrink to a quiet few, tasked with the melancholy duty of maintaining compatibility and security patches, often for users who had long since moved on. It's a quiet corner of the digital world, servers humming with legacy code like forgotten relics. Digital dust settles on unused interface elements. The once prominent E is now relegated to hidden menus or required compatibility modes, a faint blue stain on the modern OS landscape. This isn't public humiliation anymore. It's the quiet resignation of neglect. A quirky detail unearthed from this era reveals a shelved Phoenix project, a last-ditch, touch-optimized redesign concept internally debated but ultimately killed, its mock-ups collecting virtual dust in a forgotten network drive. Brand historians still debate whether the prolonged, slow sunset did more harm than good, prolonging user reliance on outdated tech. Even in its death, the browser left an indelible, often problematic mark on the digital infrastructure it helped build, a shadow lingering long after the light faded. Leaving the dusty archive, you step back out into the glare of today. But the story of Internet Explorer doesn't simply end with a final uninstall prompt. You carry the weight of its complex legacy, a narrative woven through the very fabric of the modern web. Was it a necessary evil, thrusting the Internet into the mainstream, or a pioneer, ultimately burdened by its own unchecked success and inability to adapt? You consider its lasting impact, the browser wars era, a major turning point where its sheer dominance led to a fragmentation of web standards, forcing developers into frustrating workarounds just to make sites function across browsers. This period, ironically, solidified the need for strong, independent standards bodies, a direct reaction to IE's proprietary quirks, a quirky, costly detail that haunted web development for years. Its role in bridging the digital divide for millions is undeniable, often being the default gateway for first-time Internet users globally. Yet, brand historians still debate whether this accessibility justified the stifling of competition and innovation that characterized its peak. The Blue E, once an icon of overwhelming power, now feels like a symbol of digital transience, a stark reminder that even the most ubiquitous entities are ephemeral. As you walk away, you're left pondering the true cost of its dominance, not just in lost competitors, but in stifled creativity and delayed progress. Did its spirit truly die, or did it merely change form, its influence still subtly shaping the digital landscape in ways we don't fully perceive? There is no neat closure, only a lingering sense of unease about the layered histories buried beneath the surface of our seemingly smooth digital lives. Slowly, the specific details of market share battles and feature updates fade into the background, leaving you with bigger, quieter questions. This journey through the life of a single brand reveals deeper truths about the transient nature of technology itself. What does it mean for something so central to daily life to simply disappear? Internet Explorer's story becomes a potent symbol of how quickly power can shift, how innovation can be both a tool for dominance and a catalyst for downfall, and how the digital world is in a constant state of flux, building upon and discarding its past with ruthless efficiency. Its long-term legacy isn't just about a browser. It's a lesson in adaptability, the perils of complacency, and the cyclical nature of technological evolution. The Blue E may be gone from your desktop, but its echoes resonate, a reminder that the platforms we rely on today are built on the victories and failures of the past. And maybe, just maybe, the soul of a brand is never in its product, but in the people, stories, and stumbles that shape it.